Alaskans, I respectfully implore you to recognize that the paid advertisements that you're hearing about a state constitutional convention may not be telling you the whole story, and dare I say, is spinning the story to protect the power and wealth of some who believe they would benefit more from your no vote. We are at a crossroads. We all have an important decision to make, and these are the questions we need to answer. Consider each. More than 230 state constitutional conventions have been held in our nation successfully, peacefully, without upending state government and industry, without disrupting state economies, and without constitutions being rewritten and thrown out. Are we really going to believe that the gridlock legislature will fix our problems? Do we really believe enough legislators will want to restrict their own power and vote to support putting fiscal plan amendments before the voters? Amendments to settle the PFD and institute a reasonable spending cap when they've refused to do so for the past 7 years? Are we aware that the legislature has reached simple majority support for these fiscal plan items, but has failed to reach the required 2/3 vote threshold? Delegates who don't have the same conflict of interest and won't hesitate restricting the legislature's power only need to reach a simple majority vote to put these items on the ballot before the voters. Do we understand how the gridlock in Juneau over the PFD has hurt all of us? Have we come to grips with the fact that multiple cohorts of children in our schools lost out because of the gridlock on the Read by 9 policy to help them be successful? That rapists have run rampant because the high rates of sexual assault weren't a top legislative priority because of the gridlock. That bills to reduce the cost of healthcare have died in legislative committees because of gridlock. Are we aware that every single year for multiple decades that our state fiscal house has not been in order, we've lost out on more than $500 million in private capital investment, and that would have strengthened our economy and created jobs? Do we understand that putting our fiscal house in order will help all of us, even those who are now a no and are frightened their wealth could be jeopardized if we hold a convention? A rising tide lifts all boats. Do we realize that the voters elect the delegates by district, and therefore the delegates will reflect the values of Alaskans statewide? Are we aware that the delegates would only propose amendments, and the voters would have the final say whether to accept or reject those amendments? Are we cognizant of the fact that even in polarized, emotional, divisive times, state conventions have been conducted civilly without extremist results? That 19 state conventions were held during an 18-year period from 1968 to 1986, and that actually cooled the political climate in those states. That this time period included Vietnam War protests, the Civil Rights Movement, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the Women's Liberation Movement, 2 oil crises that involved cars lining up at gas stations due to the shortage. Need I go on? Are we aware that in the more than 230 state conventions that have been held in our nation, that Pandora's box was not opened, that not a single worm escaped a can, that only sane and reasonable amendments were adopted? Have we considered that even a $17 million price tag for a convention is a bargain? That every time a regular legislative session is extended 30 days or a 30-day special session is held, it's $1 million a pop? That the regular session has been extended in 6 of the last 7 years? And that 15 special sessions have been called in the last 7 years? Have we thought about the fact that the state spends $30 million per day, every day of the year for operations? And that $17 million for a convention for 75 days with 90 days of pre- and post-work is only 0.16% of the annual budget? Are we going to succumb to fear-mongering and dark outside millions from ultra-liberal organizations telling us not to hold a state constitutional convention? Are we going to believe the ridiculous lies that we could lose our gun rights, our hunting rights, our access to public lands? Utter poppycock. Do we really want to leave the fiscal and cultural hot-button issues to the gridlock legislature and to the courts? Or should the people weigh in and debate and decide whether or not changes are to be made? Have we processed the fact that the yes side only has donations from individual Alaskans, not the millions from wealthy donors outside of Alaska? And that the no side is outspending the yes side by 100 to 1? This is a David versus Goliath battle. Alaskans, we are at a crossroads. Use logic and reason. Consider history. Recognize the safeguards. Understand that the framers put the state convention option in our Constitution for a reason. The reason is now. Don't let fear cloud your judgment. Don't bend to outside groups. Stand for Alaska. Be yes for a better, stronger, more vibrant, economically sound Alaska in the near future and for our children and grandchildren. Much is at stake. Root for David, not Goliath. Vote yes.